बेकरार करके हमें यूं न जाइए, आपको हमारी कसम लौट आई। बेकरार करके हमें यूं न जाइए, आपको हमारी कसम लौट आई।
Imagine a law that punishes a man for having a consensual relationship with a married woman, but it doesn't punish the woman herself and doesn't even allow her to file a complaint. This was the reality under Section 497 of the Indian Penal Code, a colonial era adultery law from 1860. But in 2018, the Supreme Court of India struck it down as unconstitutional in a landmark case, Joseph Shine versus Union of India. Section 497 of IPC made it a criminal offence for a man to have sexual relationship with a married woman without her husband's consent. Only the man could be punished up to 5 years in prison. She was considered a victim, not a participant. And under Section 198, Clause 2 of the Criminal Procedure Code, only husband or someone on his behalf could file a complaint. In short, law treated women as a property of his husband.
And how did this all come to be?
It all started in the year 1860's colonial origins. The Indian Penal Code is drafted under the leadership of Lord Macaulay and enacted by the British colonial government.
Ma'am, why was the woman not considered guilty under Section 497?
Section 497 criminalizes adultery, but in a highly gendered manner. A man having sexual relations with a married woman without her husband's consent can be punished, but the woman herself is not considered an offender. This reflects Victorian era morality, which was deeply patriarchal, viewing women as the property of their husbands rather than independent legal actors. The focus was not on equality or individual rights, but on protecting the sanctity of marriage in a male-dominated framework.
In 1954, the Supreme Court of India heard Yusuf Abdul Aziz versus State of Bombay, the first major constitutional challenge to Section 497 of the IPC, the adultery law. The argument was straightforward. By exempting women from punishment, Section 497 violated Article 14 of the Constitution, right to equality. Why should only men be criminally liable for adultery while women escape punishment entirely? But the Supreme Court rejected the challenge. The judges relied on Article 15, Clause 3 of the Constitution, which permits the state to make special provision for women and children. According to the court, the immunity granted to the women under Section 497 was not discrimination but a form of protection.
Ma'am, what exactly is Article 15, Clause 3 and how often it is used?
Article 15, Clause 3 was originally intended as an enabling provision, allowing the state to introduce welfare measures for the women, such as maternity leaves, reservation in education, or workplace protection. However, in the Yusuf Abdul Aziz case, the court stretched this provision to justify women's exemption from the punishment, framing it as a form of legal protection rather than recognition of women as autonomous individuals. As a result, instead of promoting equality, the judgment reinforced the patriarchal idea that women were weak, dependent, and need safeguarding, rather than being treated as equal participants in the society or the law.
In 1985, the Supreme Court once again faced a constitutional challenge to Section 497 in Soumitra Vishnu versus Union of India. This time, the challenge came from a woman herself, who argued that adultery law was deeply unfair to wives. She pointed out two glaring inequalities. First, wives cannot prosecute their own husbands' adulterous partners, and second, only husbands were treated as the aggrieved party under the law. In other words, the law recognized only husband's injury in marital rights, never the wife's.
Ma'am, why couldn't wives prosecute their husband or their affairs?
The answer lies in the patriarchal structure of Section 497 itself. The law was designed around the idea that women belong to her husband, and the adultery was essentially a violation of husband's exclusive rights. Yet, instead of correcting this imbalance, the Supreme Court upheld the law once again. The judges reasoned that Section 497 was intended to preserve the institution of marriage and widening its scope. For example, by allowing women to prosecute might do more harm than good by destabilizing families. The ruling reflected a conservative judicial outlook, where the priority was not gender equality, but maintaining a rigid idea of family harmony, even at the cost of women's autonomy.
By 1988, Section 497 of the IPC faced yet another challenge in V. Revati versus Union of India. This time, the issue raised was the law's unequal and selective application. Under Section 497, neither a wife could prosecute her unfaithful husband, nor could a husband prosecute his unfaithful wife. The law allowed only one form of action. The husband could prosecute the male considered outside involved with his wife. In other words, adultery remained framed not as a betrayal between spouses, but as a wrong committed by one man against another. Women continued to be excluded from the process with no legal agency to act as a complaint. The Supreme Court, however, dismissed the challenge once again. The challenges and the judges reasoned that Section 497 had been deliberately designed to keep husbands and wives free from being jailed at the instance of each other. According to the court, this preserved marital peace by preventing endless legal battles between spouses. But in doing so, the court once again reinforced the gender assumption of the law. Instead of acknowledging a woman as equal partners capable of making claims in marriage, the judgment treated adultery as a matter between men, husbands on one side, outsider lovers on the other, while wives remained voiceless in the eye of criminal law.
What happened next, ma'am?
From 2003 onwards, Section 497 of the IPC increasingly came under fire as an outdated, patriarchal provision that clashed with modern constitutional values of gender equality and personal liberty. The Law Commission of India, in its 2003 and later 2012 reports, urged Parliament to revisit the adultery law. The Commission suggested two possible reforms: either decriminalize adultery altogether, recognizing it as a private matter between spouses, or make the law gender neutral, so that both men and women could be held accountable under the same standard. Around the same time, the Justice Panipat Committee on Criminal Justice Reforms 2003 went even further. It explicitly recommended amending Section 497 to hold both men and women liable for adultery, thereby removing its gender bias. Yet, despite these repeated recommendations, Parliament took no action. Section 497 remained untouched.
Ma'am, why did Parliament ignore the Law Commission and Justice Panipat Committee reports?
The explanation lies in a combination of political caution and traditional social values. Although adultery was a known reality, it remained a taboo subject. Lawmakers feared that decriminalizing it would be seen as an endorsement of immorality, and would provoke backlash from conservative sections of society. On the other hand, making the law gender neutral risks opening the floodgates to new litigation, including wives persecuting their husbands, which many believed would destabilize family structures. As a result, Parliament chose inaction, allowing the colonial era provision to remain in place rather than risk political controversy. Finally, it was the Supreme Court that had to step in and settle the issue in Joseph Shine versus Union of India 2018.
Thank you, ma'am, for the valuable insights.
The Constitution Bench was led by Chief Justice Deepak Mishra with Justices R.F. Nirman, A.M. Khanvilkar, D.Y. Chandrachud and Indu Malhotra, notably the only women on the bench. The petitioner argued Section 497 was gender biased and violated dignity and privacy. The government, however, defended it, saying it was necessary to protect the sanctity of marriage. A man named Joseph Shine, a non-resident Keralite, filed a PIL under Article 32 of the Constitution. He challenged Section 497 of the IPC as unconstitutional, arguing that it violated Article 14, 15 and 21, the rights to equality, non-discrimination and personal liberty. The key argument was clear. The law treated men and women unequally. They denied women autonomy over their own bodies and choices, criminalized consensual adults' relationship, and allowed only husband to file complaints. In the most memorable moment, Chandrachud asked, "Can a woman's autonomy be taken by her marriage?"
We pronounce that Section 497 of the Indian Penal Code and Section 198, Clause 2 of the Code of Criminal Procedure stand struck down as unconstitutional. Adultery may have civil consequences, but it cannot be treated as a criminal offence. It violates Article 14, 15 and 21 of the Constitution. We affirm that marriage does not extinguish individual autonomy, and the Constitution guarantees of equality and liberty must prevail. As my learned counsel, Justice Indu Malhotra, has observed, the time when wives were considered the property of their husband has long gone.
बेकरार करके हमें यूं न जाइए, आपको हमारी कसम लौट आई। जिंदगी के रास्ते अजीब हैं, इनमें इस तरह चला न कीजिए। खैर है इसी में आपकी हुजूर, अपना कोई साथी ढूंढ लीजिए। सुन के दिल की बात यूं न मुस्कुराइए, आपको हमारी कसम लौट आई। बेकरार करके हमें यूं न जाइए, आपको हमारी कसम लौट आई।
तेरी बल्ले बल्ले हो जाएगी, बल्ले बल्ले हो
नाचना
नाचना
कसम लौट आई।